From the Drake Union at The Ohio State University, it's the National Hour with your hosts, Darius Thigpen and Jeffrey Hammersley.
And welcome to this episode of the National Hour. I'm Darius Thigpen.
And I'm Jeff Hammersley.
And we've got a special guest in studio today, Michael D-Line Mullen, as he's known club football player, joining us here today to talk about the club football team. So, Mike, let's get right into it. Starting with you, how did you get involved with club football?
All right, so I'm a 2010 graduate of Thornwood High Schools in south suburbs of Chicago, Illinois.
Yeah.
Coming out of high school, you're looking around at schools. You have the choice to play or not play in college. Coming to Ohio State, I thought I made a decision to not play football anymore. However, I found out about the club football team, full contact. We travel. It's just like varsity, except for minus the notability of it.
Yeah.
So that's how I got involved with it.
That's pretty good. Also, Mike, what's your schedule like for college football? For not college football, but like the club football, and how did your entire season go this year?
Schedule, of course, it gets very hectic. We have classes to deal with. We all have separate majors. We're all, focused on school first. That's the main focus in club football. And you kind of have to wrap your head around organizing your time as far as classes go, homework goes, any other outside activities. Then you got to put club football in there. And we practice often at nighttime. We had one practice this year, Wednesdays from 10:30 to midnight. So it gets rough. It goes into the next day sometime. Mm-hmm. But, we're all out here. We love football, so we come out and do it. As far as the season, definitely started out strong. First snag we ran into was against the defending national champion. We went to Morgantown, West Virginia for that game, called the Morgantown Showdown. Didn't turn out too well for us. We got shut out. Score ended up being 20-0, but afterwards we went on another run, and then unfortunately we ran into the team that played those defending champions, and we lost that game too, and that for the most part ended our season.
Mm-hmm. But other than West Virginia, it sounds like you guys had a pretty solid year.
Oh, definitely. We had a solid season. We played Loyola, that's a team in Chicago area. Mm-hmm. We beat them, 35-0 at halftime, I believe. The game got cut short due to lightning, and it wouldn't stop for reasons.
Yeah.
We've had other games. We've had a game here, a home game actually against Wright State, going into that Miami game. Completely dominated that game. We scored on offense, defense, special teams. So, we definitely had a good team this season. I think the best I've had since we've been here, and this is my third season.
So, one thing that some people may be kind of curious about, do you guys have anybody that tries to walk on to the varsity team?
All the time. We have a group of players almost every year that decided they want to go ahead and try to walk on the varsity. Some even come to the team first, kind of transition easier into varsity. A couple seasons ago, actually, this is probably a really good story to tell. We've had a player that played for us. He actually walked on in the Raiders special teams. So, we've had a player go to the NFL before. Wow. It's definitely a good way to get yourself noticed.
All right, so speaking of getting noticed, you're doing a documentary about the club football team. So what exactly are you doing with it? Can you tell us a little bit about the documentary?
Well, in addition to being a member of the club football team, I'm also a film studies major here.
Yeah.
And I find the best way, to work on that, including my schoolwork and what I like to do on the side, is to actually make a documentary on this club football team that I've grown to love. It's a great group of people. I've known them over the years, and I just definitely feel like the story needs to be told. We're not getting any kind of shine like the varsity does.
Well, yeah.
But it's definitely people that's out there, doing their best. So I feel like, documenting that is enough to get us out there and, also help me out in what I plan to do.
Yeah, and for you, it's like you've been doing, directing this while you've been playing games. So how have you been getting that to get stuff recorded while you're on the field as well?
Well, see, that was definitely an initial problem, but my good friend David Goodwin, he's a co-director, director of cinematography. He definitely jumped on board. He was well into it, and he's helped me organize, get other people to film games. Sometimes we had several cameras going at different games, including away games. So he's definitely been a big help, and he's definitely going to help in the interview process that's coming up early next semester.
All right, so when is this going to be done, and when can we see it?
Hopefully, it'll be done May, June, maybe. I'm hoping to get it premiered at Gateway.
All right.
So you'll definitely hear from me about it.
You have a title for it?
The other 11.
The other 11. All right, so let's make sure that we got a chance to see the other 11. My man Mike D-Line Mullen, and check out his film about the Ohio State club football team. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to have some Ohio State varsity football for you coming up on the other side of this break. This is the National Hour, and we'll be right back.
And welcome back to the National Hour. I'm Jeff Hammersley.
I'm Darius Thigpen.
And now we go to the football in review. Number 3, Ohio State avoiding the big upset in Ann Arbor against Michigan, 42-41. Darius Carlos-Hyde making history for Ohio State, the most rushing yards a Buckeye has against the Wolverines at 27 carries, 226 yards, and on 1 touchdown. But we were there for Scarlet Gray Sports Radio, and that game, an instant classic.
Oh, it was one of those games where no matter who you are a fan of, it was nerve-wracking. It was a really close game, especially for Ohio State fans who go into the game looking at the Buckeyes favored by nearly 17 points in that game. I mean, a 2-touchdown favorite, and you think Ohio State, they're going to coast. Well, it was not that kind of game, as Ohio State showed that they could be vulnerable to the pass and really be susceptible to the misdirection call, which Michigan ran to nearly perfection for the entire game, where they had a great game plan written up, and Al Borges, offensive coordinator for Michigan, he really saved his job this past Saturday because he called a great ball game, and it wasn't just one guy either. Devin Gardner, of course, had a great game, 451 yards, but Jeremy Gallon, 175 and a touchdown. Jake Butt, 85 yards and a touchdown, and Devin Funchess also had a really good game. I mean, it was a phenomenal game call overall for Michigan in that ball game.
Yeah, for Michigan. Going back to what you said about Al Borges, I mean, his Auburn days, he was part of that Auburn team that ran the table undefeated, didn't go to a national championship game, and really this season with Michigan, it's been more of the, well, they're losing, they're struggling on the ground. It's Al Borges' fault. It's not.
Yeah.
It hasn't been a lot on Brady Hoke or it's some on Gardner, but it's the play call, the offensive line, everything. He's been taking the blame for it.
To be fair, though, the offensive line had been horrendous this past season, and just to think that they even had the offensive lineman of the year, which I think was a little bit of a joke. But at the same time, I mean, Taylor Lewan, great left tackle, but overall the offensive line was not good. I mean, they had games where, remember Devin Gardner in his game where overall Michigan had negative 46 rushing yards because Gardner kept getting sacked so much. You can't. I mean, that's not a top-tier offensive line. They had one game where Fitz Toussaint, their star running back, 27 carries, 27 yards. I mean, they just could not get things going with the offensive line, but showing the talent that they have on the outside, what they did this past Saturday, they showed that if they protect Gardner, create running lanes, and stay disciplined and really do their job on the offensive line, they have talent enough offensively that this should not have been a 7-4, 7-5 team as they end up being.
Absolutely.
This was really a much more talented team than what we had seen all year, and it finally came into fruition this past Saturday against the Buckeyes.
I mean, looking at the stats, 603 yards for Michigan, Ohio State's 526 yard per really rush, 8.5 to 4.3 for the Buckeyes. Third down, Buckeyes 3 of 8, Michigan 8 of 15. Where was this Michigan team this entire season? This team could have easily had 9 or 10 wins, and they would have just played like this from day one.
And that's what I'm saying, because coming into the year, you knew, well, the Michigan defense may not be that good, but they've got a good enough offense that this team could stick around in the top 10, top 15. That it would not be a surprise to see this team coming into the Ohio State game, 1 loss, maybe 2 losses, but being a really solid team. And they fell apart this season because they could not sustain drives, because they could not protect Gardner, and they could not create running lanes. It comes down to the offensive line, but, I mean, looking at Jeremy Gallon, he's a stud. He's just 5'10", if he's even that. I mean, that's probably being a little generous in the guide right there, but in the media guide, but at the same time, you've got weapons. So Michigan, that they've got those talented guys. It was just a shame on their part that they could not have that consistently throughout the season.
They had the talent, and going into the game against Ohio State, as we said earlier, double-digit underdogs in their own place, which is unheard of for Ohio State, Michigan, especially the Buckeyes on the road. The game came down to the 2-point conversion at the end, but up to that point, Brady Hoke's play calling, how do you grade it?
Oh, it was phenomenal. I loved it. The only problem I had was late in the second half, right as as the game clock was going to 000, they were about to go to the halftime. They decided, rather than trying to go for it, they were going to run the clock out, take a knee, go into the locker room. And they were up a touchdown at the time, so it's like, okay, it's not a terrible call, but they had so much momentum that if they had gone for it, they may have gotten points out of it. And at the very least, they would have taken a shot and then nothing come of it, because Ohio State had no chance. They were not stopping them. they had only stopped them one time that entire first half. So it was Michigan's game to lose at that point, and they didn't go for it. That didn't sit well with me. And then, of course, in the fourth quarter, it was either late third quarter, early fourth quarter, they passed up on a field goal and instead went for a touchdown. I didn't agree with that at all because that was one of those situations where you just need to go for points whenever you can take them. And retrospect, hindsight 2020, but they would have had the go-ahead score on the touchdown as opposed to trying to tie the game and maybe going for the two-point conversion on the last drive. If they had taken the field goal, they would have been ahead on the touchdown. So, hindsight 2020, but like I said, those were two spots where I think Michigan should have been one more aggressive at the end of the second half and then conservative in taking the points in that one drive they went for it on fourth down.
In hindsight, it went against Michigan. The Buckeyes rolled 42-41. Leads us into this game. Ohio State was going to this game regardless, but this week it's number 2 Ohio State in Indianapolis, Big Ten championship game with a number 10 Michigan State team. Sparty only loss was to Notre Dame, who was 22nd at the time, a 17-13 loss. But it's a great offense for the Buckeyes, who are ranked 3rd versus a defensive juggernaut in Michigan State that is ranked 4th. Darius, this game, this is a big one in all perspectives. Rose Bowl on the line, possible title appearance on the line. It all comes down to this.
Even if this was just your average Saturday with nothing up for grabs, you look at this: best Big Ten offense against the best Big Ten defense, best scoring offense against the best scoring defense, number 1 rush attack against the number 1 rush defense, the most efficient passing attack against the most efficient passing defense. Jeff, this has everything you could possibly want in a power-on-power, offensive-defensive showdown.
Really, for Ohio State, you have Carlos Hyde. He's been the workhorse. If he shuts down, or the Michigan State defense shuts him down, who do you got on the table? It becomes a passing game for the Buckeyes. Now, it's just one of these scenarios where if you think, if the Michigan State defense shuts down Ohio State's offensive running game, forces the pass, we haven't seen a lot of that this season. And for Ohio State, if their defense shuts Michigan State down, how will Ohio State and Michigan State score points in this game?
Well, I mean, Michigan State's offense is not all that great, but they do have a running back in Langford who has gone well over 1,000 yards. He has 1,210. He actually has more rushing yards than Carlos Hyde, but he also has 3 more games played than Carlos Hyde. But 16 touchdowns, averaging 5 yards a pop. It's a really solid season. And Connor Cook, as a quarterback, he's really developed. He has mobility, much more mobile quarterback than they had in Maxwell the last couple of years. And on top of that, he has a big arm. So you have a guy who can run around and make some plays every now and then. And their passing attack has gone from being stagnant to a borderline play-making passing attack. I mean, they're still not going to be top 5 in the country, and they're not going to put up 50 points a game. But at the same time, Michigan State can move the ball. You better not take them for granted. That offense has come into their own.
All right, prediction time. What do you think the final score is going to be in this one between Ohio State and Michigan State? I think it's going to be close personally.
I would say it'd be a relatively low-scoring game. This Ohio State team has been averaging well over 40 points a game, nearly 50 points per game. I would say Ohio State's going to be held lower than their average, but they're going to get way over that Michigan State scoring average. So I would say right around 27 points for the Buckeyes, and then Michigan State maybe 27-20.
I was going to say race to 24. We get to 24 first. I'm going to go Ohio State. I was walking 27 points was the magic number for them.
Yeah.
I'm going to say 27-21. I think the Buckeyes, it's going to be a close one in the whole thing. Now, what made Ohio State become the number 2 team in the country? Well, it all went down in Jordan-Hare Stadium in Auburn. Number 4 Auburn winning the Iron Bowl against Alabama, 34-28. And we couldn't watch the game, but we were listening on the radio, and all I can say is this is potential game of the year right here.
Well, I mean, this is one of 2 great games Saturday. Obviously, the Ohio State-Michigan game, whether you're a Buckeye-Michigan fan or you just were watching college football just to watch it, that was a tremendous game. Comes down to a 2-point conversion, and if Michigan had made that, that may have been one of the biggest upsets in that rivalry and one of the greatest games this season. But the Auburn and Alabama game, I mean, that was not necessarily a shocker because of the result, but because of how we got to that result. The walk-off field goal return for a touchdown. Unbelievable. And, of course, it being at Auburn made it that much crazier. It was a tremendous finish.
The big thing, but leading up to that, Alabama had multiple field goal opportunities. This should have never happened. They missed field goal, blocked field goals, and that one at the end got returned. But really, the X factor in the game, do you believe that it was Saban's play calling, or was it just down to the kicking unit not being able to make field goals?
I mean, it's so tough to not blame it on the kicking unit because you have the starting kicker, he goes out and he misses 2-3 chip shots, really. So they bring in the backup kicker who only had 3 attempts on the season coming into the game, and you tell him, all right, season's on the line, go out and kick a 60-yarder, 57-yarder for the win. And you'd think, worst case scenario, he misses, we go to overtime.
Right.
Bama feels good about going to overtime. And you know what? We'll roll the dice. We'll take a shot at the win, see what happens. What's the worst that can happen? Well,
Return.
the worst that could happen was a return for a touchdown. And you obviously cannot see that coming, but you have to think, I mean, because when they were lining up, I said it right away, block and return. That's one thing that could happen that you have to think about. I mean, you have a backup kicker, a guy who's not used to taking kicks, especially not these longer kicks, and he's got pressure on him too. He's a freshman.
Yep.
He could easily mess up and have something happen. He didn't necessarily mess up by kicking into the back of a holder or anything like that, but, you know, he kicked it short and it got returned.
Just barely short. We're talking like a yard short, and this goes out of
It
bounds.
was a 109-yard
Right.
return.
Yard to the left, a little bit of wind, it actually goes through, but so many things went wrong in that last play for Alabama. It's heartbreaking loss, especially in a rivalry game. But that begs the question, Auburn wins in this fashion, winning at home against number 1 Bama. Could they be and should they be the number 2 team in the country?
I think the argument would go to Missouri ahead of Auburn right now. Yes, Auburn has a win over Bama. And obviously whoever gets the win in the SEC championship game will have another top 10 win. But, you know, Auburn, they have a bad loss, a double-digit loss to LSU, who's not looked that good in the SEC West this year. Missouri, their only loss right now is a double overtime loss to South Carolina. So, I mean, of those 2 teams, I would say Missouri has a better argument for number 2, but neither one of those teams deserve it because Florida State's undefeated and Ohio State's undefeated. Regardless of what you think about their schedule, those 2 teams have not lost.
I mean, I agree with that statement. I think Ohio State, they're an undefeated team. That's the reason why. Florida State and Ohio State, both undefeated teams. That's why I think they should be 1 and 2 respectively. But, hey, we'll find out truly after this week, after championship weekend.
Yeah, right after on Sunday, that's when the BCS pictures, all the projections are going to be finally solidified, and we're going to find out who's going to what bowl game.
All right, that will do it for this segment on the National Hour. We'll take a short break and come back with NFL and final stories.
And welcome back to the National Hour. I'm Darius Thigpen.
And I'm Jeff Hammersley.
And it's great to have you folks joining us here on Buckeye TV. And we're going to get right to NFL to finish up the show today, starting with the NFC. So right now, Jeff, we've got a game. Seattle whoops up on New Orleans, 34-7. Of course, that was up in Seattle. And that was a game where Seattle showed off the fact that they probably are the best team in the NFL. At least right now, they're the hottest team. And Seattle's a really tough place to play, too. So right now, is Seattle the best team in the NFC?
Their record proves it. I think they're a one-loss wonder right now. I mean, you beat the Saints 34-7. I'm thinking this is going to be a showdown. Saints, last time they went up there was a heartbreaking loss there. And then Seattle just turns on the afterburners. It's like, whoa, man, this team, 34-7. I mean, I didn't watch a game, but I saw the box score, and my mind was just blown when I saw that score. I'm like, 34-7. It's like, how do they hold Drew Brees down to just 7 points? I get it's in Seattle, very tough place to play at CenturyLink Field there. But it's like, wow, this team, this is for real. Pete Carroll's there, Russell Wilson. When those guys start clicking, this team is scary good.
And mind you, that Seattle was down 2 starting corners in this game as well, but you know, they still had Richard Sherman, and they still had some of their playmakers on the defensive line. But you know, it was just incredible watching the offense more. I mean, you think this offense, they've lost guys like Sidney Rice, Percy Harvin, who's supposed to come back, still having his issues with his hip. Marshawn Lynch really didn't have that great a game either. It was Russell Wilson and a couple of backup tight ends really getting it done.
Yeah, I think for Seattle, that's the scary thing. It's just imagine all the key players that they're 100% full strength back and ready to play. This is right now they're a Super Bowl contender, but all the pieces are there healthy, potentially Super Bowl champions right there. But as I said, right now it's Seattle and then the rest of the NFC right now. That includes San Francisco with the rest of the NFC because right now, I don't know how you can catch a Seattle team right at this moment.
So with the win, Seattle clinched the playoffs, and they're actually the first team in the NFL to clinch for the playoffs. Can we agree that Seattle has the NFC West? Can we agree on that?
Unless the sky falls and somehow the Niners get in that mix. But yeah, this is Seattle's right now. They've clinched this bad boy up, put
All
the
right,
lock on
so
it.
we'll go with Seattle in the NFC West. All right, going to the NFC East. This one is up for grabs. Dallas and Philadelphia are each tied 7-5. New York is 5-7, and with the loss this past weekend, Washington is out of the playoff hunt. But you've got 3 teams in the mix. 2 teams really in Dallas and Philly are going to play at the end of the season. So we'll see what happens with that one. That's going to be in Dallas to decide the East. Who do you think takes this division?
It's a crapshoot right now. Personally, I like to believe the Giants would have it because it's Eli Manning. This team
At 5-7, 2 games back.
I think they could. If this team
Already split with the Eagles.
if they
and
wake
Dallas.
up and go, hey, turn on the afterburners, and they just went out or just go crazy, I can see it happening. But going back with Tom Coughlin and Eli Manning, they have Super Bowl rings. This team, they know how to come from behind. So take them. They're the heavily favored underdogs here, but I believe in them.
You're going to go with New York.
I'm going with the Giants.
Okay.
I believe.
With the way that Nick Foles is playing right now, obviously I'm a homer. I can admit that. I'm an Eagles fan. But I can go with Philadelphia because Foles is playing so well. The defense is not giving up 80 points a game like I thought they would be. And, of course, they still have one of the best running backs in the league with LaShawn McCoy. I mean, Shady has been just a different kind of dude. I feel comfortable picking Philadelphia. And, with the way that Dallas tends to finish, I'm feeling like Philadelphia is the better team right now. Mm-hmm. But, of course, it all remains to be seen because, remember, Dallas is going to get Sean Lee back on their defense. Mm-hmm. He makes a huge difference. I just don't – it's New York. That's surprising, man.
Hey, man, if they can beat the Patriots undefeated in the playoff in the Super Bowl, they can win.
That was like 3 years ago.
Doesn't matter.
That was like 3 years. What does that have to do with right now?
Eli Coughlin, that duo there, I believe.
Moving on.
It's December for Dallas. That's when they lose a couple of games.
Yeah,
the Eagles,
why I pick Philadelphia?
The Eagles could go down too, man. I don't know, man. I got the Giants.
What was your main argument going to be 3 years ago they won the Super Bowl against New England?
Well, people use the argument, SEC, they've won 7 straight national championships. All hail the SEC. I'm bringing the same argument to the table here.
The NFC North is another division that's really up for grabs. Detroit is 7-5, and at times they look like they would run away with the division, but they've stumbled at times as well. Chicago is 6-6. They've got Josh McCown playing really good football in place of Jay Cutler, and Cutler could come back at any moment. Green Bay not out of the mix, 5-6-1, and Aaron Rodgers is said to be coming back, but we'll see. If he doesn't come back this weekend, he may not be coming back at all this season. But those 3 teams are in it, and Minnesota's way out of it. Who do you see taking the North?
This is a toss-up. This is going to bring me back down to reality right now, my pick. But I think with the way everything's lining up, this is Detroit to lose right now because we have to figure with the Cutler thing, you don't know how healthy he's going to be when he's back. Green Bay, Rodgers, you play him if he's not 100%, that's a risk and liability in itself. Right now, Detroit, the defense with Sue and Fairley, and then offense with Megatron, Calvin Johnson, and Matt Stafford. And Reggie Bush also in that equation.
Yeah, don't forget about Reggie.
I don't see how this team's going to let that lead slip away.
Yeah, I thought they were the best in that division coming into this year because of the improvements they made defensively and getting Reggie Bush, but I'm going to stick with the Lions as well. All right, NFC South. This one is going to be really fun. New Orleans and Carolina, who actually play Monday night, each are 9-3, they play Sunday night. New Orleans coming off the loss, getting tossed by the Seahawks. Carolina, hottest team in the NFL right now. Who would you go between the two of them?
I picked Tom Brady and put the Patriots over Cam Newton and the Panthers a couple weeks ago, and that was a big mistake there. I'm starting to believe in Superman and Cam Newton. I'm believing in Carolina.
Cam?
I'm believing. After that New Orleans loss to Seattle, Carolina, they can bring – I know Cam Newton can rally that team around, so I don't know, but I think Carolina, this team can pull it away.
Carolina will make the playoffs. I love Cam Newton the way he's playing right now, but I cannot pick against New Orleans. Drew Brees, man, you cannot go against him. Especially because they have
picks here.
They have I think they have 3 of their last 4 at home, and they do not lose in the Superdome.
That's true.
Got to go with New Orleans in my mind. All right, going to the AFC side real quick. Ton of teams. You have Kansas City, who's 9-3 right now, but then after that, you have a ton of teams at 6-6. You have the Ravens and Dolphins at 6-6. Titans, Steelers, Chargers, and Jets at 5-7. Does anybody make the playoffs out of this? Does anybody deserve to?
I don't think they deserve, but this is one of my reach picks here. I'm taking Pittsburgh.
I mean, they're right there.
They lose close. They're
not out of it.
They're not getting the wheels blown off the wagon. They keep it close, but keeping it close and winning games, there's a difference there. You don't get any points for losing close, though, but I think Pittsburgh, they're in the mix, and I think couple wins and just get a little bit of something going on there. I believe in them. Pittsburgh's in the playoffs. It's maybe the 16th.
Of all those teams, the Ravens are the only ones that I really see to be winners. So I'm going to go with the Ravens.
Ravens? Okay, I can see that one.
I'm not even confident in that. All right, so now it's finally time for that part of the show where we go on to the final stories, and we're going to start with Mr. Jeff Hammersley.
All right. Last weekend can probably be considered as one of the best weekends in college football. 2 rivalry games that went down to the wire that involved 2 and now 3 potential teams that could go to the national championship. The game, Ohio State ended with a 2-point conversion stop that kept the Buckeyes' national championship dreams alive. And the Iron Bowl involved a game-ending touchdown return that propelled Auburn into the national championship conversation and pulled away a potential three-peat for Bama. Now, coming into championship weekend, I wouldn't be surprised if more craziness went down this weekend. After all, this is college football.
Bias. No matter how hard we try not to allow it, it's a part of coverage. It's tough for myself as a Buckeye to view the world the same way a media member assigned to another team would see things. The one thing that we can do is admit our biases and try to limit how much it absorbs us. We can choose to take the homer route and proclaim our team is the greatest and how great they are. We can also choose to present the facts clearly and let the fans choose who's best. I choose to stick with the latter rather than the former, but it sure wouldn't be alone if I tried to act like a fool and skew stats to make my team look good. This is why I commend those who disregard biases and do their jobs like they're supposed to. 2 guys I'd like to point out are Reese Davis and Kirk Herbstreit. Davis is an Alabama grad, and with the way he hosts the college football shows, you never have a clue where he went to school. Herbstreit is a former Buckeye quarterback, but he was essentially ran out of Columbus for not being a homer and criticizing OSU when necessary. To Reese, Herbie, and all those out there who can talk sports and do it without making it a bias-crazed argument that borders insanity, I thank you. So we thank all of you for joining us here on the National Hour today. I'm Darius Thigpen.
And I'm Jeff Hammersley.
And we'll see you next time. Of course, OhioStateSports.net, Scholar and Great Sports Radio will have coverage of the Big Ten Championship. And, of course, the Lantern and Buckeye TV will have all your updates. We'll see you next time here on the National Hour.